We are creating a platform for those who are curious, one that tells the story from the artist's perspective, moments in time captured from the innovators who are reshaping dance, music, theater, and the visual arts. This is the Working Artist Project.
Hey guys, it's Darian Douglas. Welcome to the second season of the Working Artist Project. In fact, if you're back after the first season, welcome home. And if you're not, let me tell you a little bit about this podcast. I sit down with some of the most influential and talented artists from multiple fields, and we discuss the challenges of constructing a successful career as an artist. You will be inspired and motivated after listening to these amazing people conquer challenges and live life on their terms. Welcome to the Working Artist Project. So I want to welcome Alycia and Daisy to the Working Artist Project.
Hello.
Thank you.
Daisy, thank you.
So I want to start. I just want to get a little background for both of you. Like, Alycia, you can go first. Like, where you're from, what do you do, why do you do it?
Okay, that's a lot. Not really, but so I am from the Twin Cities in Minnesota, and I am I'm a pastry chef by trade, a chef, cook, food lover by life. And right now, I've worked at a number of places. I've moved to New York just to pursue food and find a home, place around people I love, and further doing that. I currently am sort of taking some time to sort of change up how I explore food and operate that in my working and creative life. So about to embark on some new things, cooking-wise.
I am also from the Twin Cities. We grew up together. And born and raised in St. Paul, living now in Minneapolis, still really close to, hashtag Twin Cities, I guess. And so my mother is, I don't think she would call herself an artist, but she was always painting and drawing and stuff when I was growing up. Mm-hmm. And that was just always something that I loved and that came natural to me. And I've always just had like a paintbrush in my hand since I can remember. And I used to always make books and and write and draw and like want to express myself. And I don't know, when I decided to pursue that professionally, that was a big step for me because it wasn't something that I think that it's definitely not something that like you're, that you make a lot of money on necessarily, but I was like, this is something that I think I'm, that I'm passionate about, that I wanted to do. So it's definitely not like my primary source of income right now, but it's something that I'm finally able to dedicate the majority of my time to, which is great.
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
That's dope. So the two of you guys, you met in Minnesota.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. At church when we were in first, second grade.
Oh, man.
Our dads actually went to high school together, and just by chance, we happened to be in the same church because there's literally not that many black churches in Minnesota.
We
all know each
Baptist.
other. Yep. Back in the day.
Shadrach.
Yeah.
Pilgrim
Just like that. That's great, man.
Yep.
So I want to get right into this and talk about some of the challenges you guys face and have overcome as creatives, and more specifically as women of color or black women, and also being creatives. And how do you like move shit around so that you can find your space and like make it work?
Mm-hmm. So I think that it's really important to, we were actually talking about this when you were talking about coming to New York and having a support system and a network, and I feel the same in Minneapolis. I have a really, really dope community out there. And a lot of it is people that I met in college, but I would say most of them are people that I met after. I think it's just important to be meeting and conversing and connecting with like other people, other black people, other creative people. I would just say that for me, like where I've been able to have the most joy, the most feeling of success in terms of like making something that I love and that I feel good about, it's been in conjunction with other people and how it relates to the people near me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I think agreeing with that was a lot of like my whole journey of me coming to New York was finding a place where I think I fit in. Yeah, I was working as a cook in Minnesota, but there's also being like a cook and being a woman is like a rarity in a kitchen. Like you're always kind of like that weird outlier. And then in Minnesota, on top of that, I'm already this outlier being like a Black woman in a kitchen. And it was a great thing to come to New York. And like Daisy said, I got to build this community of very different people, like not just like Black people of all colors, all everything. And it just made me feel, one, when I was in my outside community at home and like my friendships and relationships I had there, I felt more supported by that than if I was walking into a place where I wasn't necessarily just like the only one, which I often was not, which was great and like amazing to see. I think you're able to like handle that better because you have this like backing. I was very fortunate that out of my number of kitchens I worked in have also been very female strong, which is a very big rarity. And like, it's just, it doesn't happen. Where I worked at a number of restaurants where the head chef / one of the owners was a woman, and there was therefore a lot more women working on the line. Like we would have nights when I was working at Calliope where it was like ladies' night on Sunday because the entire line would just be like women.
Oh, that's dope.
Dirt Candy, which I just left, is another big name restaurant that has led by a female chef, and therefore it just happens that ends up being a lot of the staff comes for that reason because they're like, it's great, I want to work around other women and see each other like supported in a way, and like being like, hey, we're gonna challenge you the same way. We're not like gonna like, we just sort of have a different way of acting in the kitchen.
Wait, what does that mean?
It's just a little different. It's like, it's not, you're not having to try to get in on like the boys club and do boy things and be like, ha, 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 yeah, taking like dick jokes and shit and like whatever. You can just be like, no, I don't have to do that to you for us. Like,
you mean locker room talk?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah. You don't have to do any of that. And it's like you said, when you can see yourself reflected in your community and the place where you're being forced to grow as an artist, it changes like how you like feel and how like your confidence.
It allows you to focus, I would say, too, because you're not worried and you're not necessarily diverting so much of that attention that you would normally put into
fitting
in. When you can like focus exclusively on the work that you do in your craft, I think is maybe where you were going with that too.
Yeah,
I feel the same.
It's not this constant battle to be like the toughest. Or like, yeah, I'm a girl. You're not having to constantly prove your gender.
Self-imposed, like, you guys are putting that on yourselves. No one's coming up to you like, prove to me you're good, you're a woman. Like,
no, that's definitely the case. People do.
And it's not necessarily that they're going to say they won't happen like that. But the instance when you're in a kitchen and every time you go to like lift something heavy or whatever, some dude always tries to do it for you. That's like, I'm not gonna lie, that pisses me the fuck off. Like when especially. Like, it just happens. And guys will be like, oh, no, I got it. No, you can't. I'm fine. I can carry a 50-pound bag of flour and a 25-pound bag of sugar across the kitchen. Mm-hmm. No, I don't need you to do this just because you think I'm a woman and I'm, like, not capable of that physical
that's
mentality.
chivalrous. That's how we were raised as men. It's like, let's help. It's not to demean you or say that you can't do it, but it's like, let me do this because I'm not doing anything right now, so let me help you.
Well, that type of thing doesn't necessarily bother me, but I definitely know why that would bother you. Our personalities are a little bit different with that because I always like have my husband do all that stuff for me. I'm like, you mow the lawn, you take out the trash. But for me, it's more of like I would say on less of a physical scale, but like more of like emotionally, mentally, like inspiration wise, I feel like I have a different energy when I'm with women and when I'm with Black women. Like there's a different type of like creative energy that I've found that has arisen. And not only just, I wouldn't even say just with women or with Black women, but I think also like in just brown communities, even when there's a lot of really great Black and brown men in Minneapolis that I have great relationships with, that we do a lot of creating together. And they're all different dynamics. And I wouldn't necessarily say that I would love to exclusively work, with people that are just like me, but it's definitely like, and I don't think you would either, but it's more so that like there is a different dynamic and there's a different type of like creative energy and a more also like a way that you just like naturally relax when you don't feel like you have to think about being on the defensive with certain things, I would say. Yeah. I feel like I've been able to relax a little bit more mentally, emotionally in the community that I'm working with now. I'm working on a really cool film series with a buddy of mine, and well, a few buddies of mine, but a buddy of mine wrote this film series basically in relation to how Prince passed, and like these 3 girls growing up in Minneapolis after Prince died, and like what Prince meant to them, and like all these different things. And it's just this different energy that's really dope, working with mostly like brown women. It's crazy. I've never like felt anything like it before. Yeah. It's
so
dope.
we need to, separate men and women like in the old times.
No.
It's just like more so like it's cool to,
Right.
it's cool. It's cool to be able to experience things like that, and to have, in the same way that I would say it's important to have like spaces that are dedicated to like people of color, where you might have sometimes spaces that are dedicated to people of color where you may not want to have white folks around for, so that you can have a certain way of like relaxing. It's in the same kind of way, I would say. Yeah. And not to say that you would exclusively want that all the time, but like to have an opportunity. It's different.
So check this out. You guys seem to be very intelligent and have strong family backgrounds. You know? So I want to know, did your parents give you any like words of wisdom that you now live by? And if so, I only want 2 of them. Don't go down the whole list.
Like two
things that your
words,
parents
like,
told you that like affects you now today, and you're like, you know what? I still follow those guidelines, and it like really keys into the success you've had so far.
I would say like definitely hard work and perseverance, and like not quitting, I guess. And I guess that's like all kind of the same thing. But my mother is an immigrant, and she's a Chilean national, and she's now, American. And then my dad's from Mississippi.
Me too.
Dope, dude.
Jackson.
Canton.
Oh, that's right down the street.
Yeah. And then my dad came up for high school, and that's where our dads went to high school together. But yeah, like, both of my parents had very, very humble backgrounds. We grew up, going to Savers out of necessity, and now I go because like thrifting is cool. But like back in the day, it was like, it was we just didn't have money. My dad, worked super hard. My mom worked super hard. They were able to establish something for me and my brother, and for themselves too. But definitely, like, I think just hard work, and especially with being a creative, like the understanding that there's no such thing as like instant gratification, and you have to be able to put in work for what you want. And I think that's like the biggest thing that my parents left me with, is that just the hustle, man. I would say.
Yeah, I'd say there's the whole bit about the hustle that kind of flows a lot into. Like I said, I recently kind of changed up what I'm doing, and I've had a lot of recent very conversations with my dad, especially over like the course of the last couple of years. Things have gone on with my job, and there are always people who I like come back to and talk, and I'm like, so what's going on? I'm like, well, but they've always I think they've always told me that I have the skills within me to do kind of anything. Like, it's there, like, no matter what. They're like, you've got this, like, you just don't hold yourself back. I think was also a really big thing that was told to me, was that I like, I know my own personal kind of faults and things. Like, I kind of tended to be like shorting myself a little bit. My dad's like, no, what you're doing. Just go out there and show it. Don't let anyone ever tell you that you don't know it and you don't have the skills, because it's there. And also, I think in a way, they've also given me a lot of flexibility. Like, though my parents, like, as growing up, they were always the kind about, like, make sure you're getting great in school, this and this. And at the time, they seemed much more tough and strict on me, like, following these lines. And I think now, as I've gotten older and we talk about things, I think it was a way of preparing me to be like, you can now choose. Like, I was set up to be able to choose and follow my own course. And whether it be sort of, I don't know, different and off, like, the path of how everyone tells me to go, it's cool. And my dad's like one of those people to like talk to him recently who's like, I did the same thing, except for I was like 45 years old with 2 kids, and I'm like, why am I going to go and leave this job that I was working at, and it seems like I should be doing this. And he talks to me, my parents are both very spiritual people, and he's like, no, I sat down and prayed and was like, God, but like, what am I doing? And shouldn't I have this? I'm worried about what next thing is how am I going to be able to take this step and go here? And if I should get my MBA and I want to do this, and how do I do that? He's like, all I just had to say was like, just ask, and it'll be there. There will be a way. If that's what you need to do to like be happy and like follow your heart and your art, then that's what you need to do.
this is kind of a sensitive topic, but
Oh no.
do you guys consider yourselves feminists?
I plead the fifth. I'm just kidding. I would say that I do.
Why?
Yeah. Because I think that a lot of people misunderstand feminism and misunderstand the goal of feminism. And a feminist is really just anybody who believes that, like, men and women and people who may identify as, anything else really all deserve the opportunity to
be treated and live life equally.
Yeah.
Except for taking out the trash.
Except for taking out the trash. I stand by that 100%.
And mowing the lawn.
But that being said, if I was a single gal, I would have no problem doing that. But
Yeah.
Well, you wouldn't have a choice.
I wouldn't have a choice.
This
I'd
is
have
true.
to do it. But
This is true. I'm thinking about how there's all the recycling I got to take out in the morning before I leave the
Sorry,
house because
see,
I messed
girl?
up.
There you
It
go.
doesn't change.
But I think that really what it is just, I think people just really just misunderstand the notion of feminism, think that women want, more than men in feminism. It's just like, women in power suits that like are stomping around being like, men suck.
Yeah,
But
I think they put it into like
love
a sort of being
men.
like a men hating thing, and I'm like, it's
Yeah.
not about that at all,
It's
because that wouldn't mean equality. That means someone is being put down. That
Yeah.
does no good for anyone at that point.
Well, it seems like sometimes men need it to the issue to be about them when it's not about them.
Yeah, it's
So
not
like,
about them at all.
actually,
Yeah.
this isn't about us.
Quite
so
true.
it's like
It's not about you.
Yeah, that's how I feel, at least. It's not
Yeah.
about us, so it's not threatening.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And everybody should feel and be treated equally,
Yeah,
no matter what. You know what I mean?
yeah. It feels.
I feel you.
I think that within feminism, there's a certain empowerment for everyone, no matter what gender you are. Like, we all came from women. Like, we have mothers, we have
for
daughters,
yourself.
sisters, sister friends. Like,
was
I
made
don't
in a petri
understand
dish.
how you can live your life and have women in your life and not be a feminist.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like,
And
as a
also
man,
as
like, it's like, this
men-
does better for you. Like, hey, if we were all equally treated, the world would it could change itself.
And also men, I think, too, just playing off that even further, there are so many standards and expectations that we put on men as well, that are sometimes very damaging, in the same way that, like, it can be really damaging, for women. But I think a lot of times, too, we put all these expectations on men and, like, what it means to be a man and what it means to be masculine and like what a real man is. And that's kind of it's a different side of the same coin as well.
Yeah, you're right. I agree with that. Now, why do you guys think that black women are more successful in university than black men?
Gosh.
What are you doing that we not doing? What's the problem?
I think, honestly, I feel like...
I'm not sure if it's a specific thing that we are doing.
I think it's a lot of things. And I think
Are not doing. It is a lot of things. Because it is very interesting when you look back at, and I think anyone, like I know for sure, when you look back at your classroom dynamics, who was there, when you were looking at the students of color, there was the majority like women of color. And like, why is that? What is happening? There's a gap somewhere. Something is being missed, I think, in translation, in our care of young black men and how they are like allowed to get to that. Like, what is going on?
because it's not just
It's not even getting there. It's
getting
even once
there, and then
even
it's once you're there, and it's like, yeah, I feel like there's a lot of issues, and honestly, I don't know that I could really put my finger on it, but I know that, like, when I'm thinking about a lot of the guys that I knew in college, and this is specific to, like, also being at, like, a Big Ten university, and just the crew I was rolling with. I was rolling with a lot of athletes, and a lot of the guys that I knew were pursued by the university specifically for their athletic skill, the black guys that I knew, and they definitely weren't valued or treated, you know, in a way where their education mattered, and I felt like that was super duper messed up. I saw a lot of them get pushed into certain majors just because it was like, easy, and then there were definitely many that decided to pursue other things, but it was always like, man, it was like they were treated like workhorses.
Yeah.
And I felt like that was, it just made me feel so
I feel like
weird.
that's a lot of what I saw coming out of high school from like Edina, like where I went to school. I went to a different high school and shit, but the school I went to was majority white. Like you knew every black person because there were only maybe 15 of us.
Okay.
But like seeing that was like the same thing. It was like people were just kind of like automatically put onto like this path. It was like, oh no, we're gonna just push you to this easier thing. My parents even experienced it with me as like a child, like them wanting to put me into like more advanced classes. They're like, oh no, we can't put her there just because they don't know anything, despite the fact that they like have my grades from previous schools and can test me and see what she's doing. But we're like, oh, so that's what you're about.
Yeah.
And it's like that same thing. I didn't see it as much.
Lowering of expectations is what it is. I feel like it's part of it. I wouldn't say that's all of it, but I would say it's a lowering of expectations, and it's in this, I feel like, for specifically to the very specific, and I'm talking very specifically, I think, about Black athletes, because I feel like that's a big part of like what universities, they're like, we want more diversity, so we'll get some brown people in on the team. But I think that like the way that those students in particular were treated, just speaking to my own experience and the friends that I had, it was definitely like they were really just being used by the university to like bump up their creds of like, we have a lot of Black people, we're winning games, or this and this and that. And if there were things that were going to be more challenging to them, even if that's something that they wanted to do and they wanted to be challenged, it was like discouraged, or it was because they had to have certain grades to play, or this and this and that, or I don't know. It was really yuck. And then there's also the fraternities and sororities, and I think that there's a lot of community that's built with that, but I think also there's a whole
that misses out on an entire
tradition
section.
And
I feel like for me, so one thing I saw a lot of, like you're about to talk about, I think, is community within universities, and there were a lot for when you saw like Black people or people of any color, like it was those groups that were there to support you were like your fraternities and sororities, and I think outside of that, or outside of being an athlete, there weren't many other like groups to be like, hey, here are some other people to be like, we are as a community going to encourage each other to go further, to get beyond these like goals and lines that people are setting in front of us, of this like not higher standard that we should be able to do any of these things and whatever it is you want, not just fit into this one little box.
And I would say I had a different experience than that, just because I was at the U, which is it's such a large
school.
university that even though like it was a small percentage of folks that were Black, it was still a ton of people, because it's just such a big school. And so we had like the Black Student Union, we had Black motivated women, we had La Raza for a lot of Hispanic people, and there was a lot of Afro-Latino people, and then there was, a ton of other groups for other folks. But so I felt like I had a different experience, but I still definitely saw like there's still just this I don't know,
It's
there's
just
still
a
gap, and I think that there's a difference in the way that Black men are treated
within the system
and within the university, for sure.
Definitely within like class, like, and the school I went to was like overall very widely diverse, and it was a small school. Johnson Wells, when you were in classes, I went to school with basically the same people all 4 years. Like I saw the same faces, but you can even tell in the dynamics of classrooms as to how people were treated and like who you saw in your class. And once we got past like our like associate's degrees and whatever, and you're like, well, who is now into like the 4-year programs where you have to apply to get in and stuff, and you're like, well, where did people go? Like who's like, oh, I didn't make it into this class because like no one talked to you, because maybe your mentors, who are the people who are supposed to be your mentors, I don't think, maybe not like actively racist, but like they don't know how to approach people who are different than them, and how to be like, I'm going to form these relationships with these students and sort of cross that barrier, which I think maybe that is the gap that's being missed.
The absence of Black teachers, Black male teachers, and Black male mentors, role models, is one of the reasons why they tend to.
I think that's a possible one. That's a possible one, but I think we can't look at it as being just a responsibility of there to be Black teachers in the schools. Yes, that needs to be something that needs to happen. But I think there's a problem if we're looking at, so there aren't Black teachers. So what are these other teachers doing? What are they missing that just because they are of a different race that they're not able to then support these students in that same way? Like, it's like to say, it's like we can't, like, we're trying to like kind of dance around the word right now of we have to realize there is something racially motivated in here that, yeah, these teachers, maybe they're intimidated by this idea of the black man and they like don't know how to handle and talk to students or whatever it is they see. And that's why people aren't reached, because no one's like, they're just scared to cross that line and be like, well, hey.
That's an interesting point. I mean, for me, I had a white mentor and I also had black mentors, you know, so it's hard for me to relate with that. But I'm not saying it's not true, but I can see that for sure happening. Now, I had a very interesting conversation with a friend of mine.
Sorry.
And he said, it was the responsibility of the black woman to raise up the black man. I think that's false.
Could you hear my eye roll?
Now, I think it's the responsibility of the black man to raise himself up, because the black woman she raised herself up. You know what I mean? And she, like, for instance, like my grandmother, she got divorced with 9 kids, went to college, finished, and started teaching. I mean, that's some bad shit.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? If my grandmother can do that way back then what's wrong with these motherfuckers out here today?
Well, I would say what I would say too is I feel like I feel like we have collectively as a society lowered our expectations of black men in many different ways. And I feel like when you lower your expectations, there's a few different things that can happen with people. And there can be situations where, like, you lower your expectations and somebody's like, you know, well, I'm going to prove you wrong. And they can, like, go out there and they can knock it out of the park. And then there can be situations where people are like, well, you know, like, these expectations are lowered. And I'm, you know, I don't know. I'm not going to, you know, it can, I feel like people can react in different ways. Now, I don't feel that, I know plenty of people, men, women, otherwise, that have transcended expectations. I think about my dad, and I think about how he was somebody who, you know, and I actually think about a lot of the people and black men that I know that have faced incredible challenges. And I don't think it's as simple as somebody just, you know, raising them up by their own bootstraps, because I actually don't believe in that for most people. I think that there's always this kind of concept in America of, like, you know, we should all be able to, like, help ourselves and do our own thing. And I do feel that it's all of our job as a community to always, like, help and bring up more people and, like, bring up the next generation.
Yeah.
But at the same time that I think that when we collectively, like, lower our expectations of people, like, that does something to a person's, like, psyche. That does something to people. And I think it depends on how much that's happened. I think it depends on what the circumstances is with each person. I think there's never going to be, like, a blanket, like, thing that you can say, oh, this is the reason, this, you know, pointing to any one thing. But I definitely think that there's a problem when you start looking at, you know, black men as a whole and saying, you know, why are these guys, like, what's wrong with them? Why haven't they done it? Because I think that, you know, when we raise our expectations of them as a whole, of black men, of black women, of black children, of whatever, I think that we're going to see crazy, amazing things happen when we start expecting that of people, of individuals. And I think that it's hard because how do you implement that? I wouldn't know where to begin. But I think the first thing has to start is, like, with the expectations. And I think that goes back to just what I saw when I was in school, of just, like, having really low expectations for people in certain areas. And you would see some people, like, be like, yo, like, you know, I'm gonna, like, that didn't affect, there was many people that didn't affect them, but then there was many people who that did affect them.
Yeah.
You know?
I can understand what you're just saying about, like, the psyche in a certain way of, it's very interesting now to look back at, like, struggles I think I dealt with as a child growing up in a very, like, predominantly white community that I didn't necessarily time. I remember my dad and, like, my mom saying these things to me and being like, you know, you have to be better than them all, like, every time, and why? And things I didn't notice till, like, later that I'm like, this actually does as a child very much so affect you when you're like, this teacher is obviously not pushing me. As a very, like, I was not bragging or anything, but, like, I was a very bright child and I knew what I could get away with and how well, like, I'm like, it doesn't take me that much work. And these teachers who were like, oh no, like, she's just doing so good. She's doing so good for, like, what she is. We're so surprised. And it's like these lowered expectations that, like, I think in a certain way it contributed to certain habits I may have, or like how I think I saw myself, and like it's just kind of an interesting, weird sort of reflection to notice. Like that is what you're saying. Like expectations that we're setting for people aren't the same. It's like if we're looking at you're saying about feminism, even it's like we're just creating an equal playing field. We should all be held to the same level of accountability, which I guess in a way is almost agreeing with we should be able to pull each other up. You should pull yourself up by the bootstraps. So why can't they get it together if women can get it together?
And I think
I think the problem with that is
sorry. No, you want.
I think that problem with that sentence is like there's a good part of it and then there's like a bad part. Everyone thinks this whole pulling yourself up by your bootstraps is automatically like kind of a like rude thing to say. Well, why aren't you getting yourself together?
You're assuming that people already are on the same playing field.
Exactly.
And people are not. And I think that's something also that needs to be acknowledged is that like
I don't like the fact that it ignores the importance of the community. Like you're taking accountability out of like maybe people need someone else in their lives. Like I'm sure your grandmother had other people in her life who were like, here, I'm going to encourage you. Whether that be like, you know, just aunts, cousins, family, your neighbor next door.
While you go to class.
Yeah, like the church, like
right, for sure.
These things are there, and I think we tend to ignore that. And I think when we're approaching the problem of like, let's say like why are Black men not performing and doing as well in the university system as Black women, I think that's why we're ignoring two parts of it. It's like she said, we can't just say it's like one thing. It's this two parts of these expectations are not being set correctly or like applied, and then we're not creating a community or a support system.
Right. I think it's both. It's
both things.
Oh my God, you're right. It's
both things.
We have to have a better support system, and we also have to have higher expectations for people. And I think also you can't have that doesn't mean that you have to have the same expectations, because, you know, there are differences in communities and in things, what's important to people in different communities and just things that matter to different people.
Yeah.
And you have to acknowledge those differences, but that doesn't mean that you should expect less.
I think by less, you shouldn't expect a lack of achievement is what it is. We should always expect a high level of achievement. Maybe that means that, okay, so you started off the year reading
in different
you reading
ways
at like a
to
C, right?
Those things is what it is that different people might need different kinds of support to achieve the same thing. And it doesn't necessarily mean that somebody can't achieve something. It just means that there may be different kinds of support than what you're used to giving. And I think that that's what's lacking, is a different understanding of maybe different types of support that might need to be given for different communities. And then also having, just like you said, high expectations of achievement and like believing in people, really.
That's cool. Like, community is important, right? So what do you guys do to give back to your community? Like, are you involved in any projects or any other things?
Heck yeah.
Okay, let's hear about it.
So I, again, I'm living in Minneapolis, and for me, so as an artist, I definitely sell my work, and I, do stuff, trying to make a little money. But I also like working on creative projects that I believe in and that I feel will be either fun for me to work on, or that I feel like will help inspire people or move people. And so right now, I'm currently working with Free Black Dirt, which is a little collective, through a couple friends of mine who do a lot of, writing and theater and things like that. And so there's a pretty dope little artistic, musical, theatrical community in Minneapolis. A lot of us that do different things, but who right now, what we're currently working on, which I was so sad that I missed the first day of shooting, was yesterday, but I had to come up here for work. But basically, this commemorative kind of film series about Prince and what he meant for people in Minneapolis, and about what it means to be a weird Black kid, and fitting in, and all the different things that it means to be Black and brown and mixed, and the different kind, diasporic, and all the different kinds of beautiful people and different kind of ways that Blackness can express itself. And really, I mean, honoring Prince because, we're super, Minneapolis out here, but also just what he meant really to the world and to people who didn't feel, brown people who felt like they didn't really like fit in anywhere, who felt like they were different, and what Prince inspired with them. So that's a project that I'm working on right now. That's like, faux free. And for love, for love of it. And and great. It was something that it was with some people that really inspired me that I think do really good stuff.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
I think kind of one of the things right now I think is part of what I'm trying to find again while working in the restaurant industry, especially in New York. It can kind of be very isolating. You get caught up in sort of this whole, I don't know, like almost very media driven like hype thing. And I think I'm trying to get back to a place. I've definitely worked at a couple of restaurants where I really felt that we as a team were doing something with food that was imaginative and creative and like, I think affecting like the food community of like, for like going and creating those relationships with like farmers and chefs. When I was at Contrada, like it was just like an amazing feeling every day. Oh God, okay, here comes the guy with our pigs every day. And like sort of feeling those connections to the people and to where my food's coming from. And I think that's one of the things I'm looking forward to getting more back to right now. As far as other things I do is I always try and support. A lot of my friends are like artists outside of my own study. So I think that's been the great thing about coming to New York. Like I've also been able to really form this great just crew of people who do all sorts of things. And I'm always out to be like, okay, hey, so-and-so maybe needs me to make some cookies for this event that they're doing. Or like my sister does like a theater company. And I'm like, okay, yeah, I can volunteer and like sit here at a table one day. Oh, okay, maybe. Right. Yeah, if you really need me to, yeah, I can be the one to hold down the grill this night. It's fine. I can make it happen. And just, I think there's all these like little things of supporting the people who I think I have around me who are, I think, doing much more for the community at whole than what I maybe am currently in my life. So
yeah, that's great. Yeah, community is like really important, especially for us brown people. We need to like support each other. So do you have something to say?
Oh, I just said hashtag community.
Oh, hashtag. So for you, everybody can't see, this podcast. So
you may have to say hashtag.
You might have to say it, but some of my listeners, but it's on YouTube too. So, but anyway, what have you learned from creating? You know what I mean? Like, have you been influenced? Like, have you had any like life-changing experiences from creating? And if so, like, what is that? And how does it make you feel?
Oh man. Yes, I think that definitely like, because more than anything in terms of like my art, I would identify myself specifically as within the realm of like visual art. I would say that I am a painter. And I feel like I had this professor, David Feinberg, in college that really like, it was a dimensional painting class, and the dimensional painting was all about like painting on basically on 3-dimensional surfaces and like challenging like your view, basically like challenging your views on kind of painting as like a 2D art form. And I still do a lot of 2-dimensional paintings just because a lot of people want to buy 2-dimensional paintings, but it really challenged me and it kind of opened my eyes to something in terms of like limitations for myself, and kind of just all these limitations that we might see and not even realize that we're seeing it, and that we're placing these limitations on ourselves. And so I feel like that helped me. And it's not something that I could say that I can like put my finger on like all these specific things, but I think it really freed my mind in a way that I didn't expect it to, where I was like, it was weird that it really like blew my mind so much that I was like, we were painting on tables and we were building structures and painting on them. And I was doing all this, I was working on this Voice to Vision project that he does every year with like survivors of genocide and Holocaust, where we would help when I did this internship with him, where we would translate these stories of people into visual art and visual pieces, and just it made me think about art in a different way, and it therefore made me think about life in a different way, and the purpose of art, and like the purpose and how you can create anything. And it wasn't just about like creating art, it was about like creating anything in life. I feel like it kind of just opened up my mind in a way, so that was pretty cool, I guess, to answer your question.
Cool. I think for me, one thing I've I just kind of always thought is that for me, cooking is like a form of meditation. So it's always kind of been that thing that I do to kind of bring myself to a center, to maybe, which in then terms brings me to like certain revelations about my own life. And like, even the point of where I figured out that I was going to want it to be a chef was I was literally in the kitchen. I think I was in like 6th grade. I was making something, a pot pie, something I decided I was baking that day. I was making for dinner, and I just suddenly was in this, like, I was in the process of like taking something out of the oven, and I was just like, wait, this is a job. I had for so long decided that I didn't want to grow up because I was like, well, that sounds horrible. And I'm like, well, if I do, I'm gonna have to figure out something. And it was it just came to me. It was like, oh. And even now, I think it's now come a step further where I'm able to put into words, like, this is this act of meditation. It brings me back to, like, I'm not necessarily when I'm cooking always being like super creative, but it gives me a space to kind of work out my world and how I see things. Recently, I understand that when I'm not cooking, it's like I'm not practicing. Like, people talk about practicing yoga and meditation. It means I'm not in my practice. So I'm not thinking about my life, about my choices, about what I'm learning. I'm not processing, I think, if I'm not actually cooking and taking that time to do that.
Wow,
and that's it's interesting to realize that those are two different things for me. Like, I can be at work and I'm working. Working is a very different thing. It's a sort of forms emotions that I sometimes am just like doing, and I'm like, I got to get through things. But the act of really cooking and just going through the steps and measures of, like, when I'm in my kitchen and I am like deciding what order I'm going to put things into a pot and pan, things come to me. Like, the other thing that recently came to me was, as I'm trying to look for what my next jobs are going to be, what my next choices are, is I need to fill in gaps. I was making fried rice, and I realized that there are gaps that, I've seen how to make fried rice and specific tips. And I had some of the things I'm like, wait, there are orders and there's a better way to do this. And I'm putting this egg in here, but I'm like, no, I didn't do this quite the way. And I'm like, oh, that's because I have a gap in my knowledge, which then applies to so many things across my own, like, artistic chef journey, is that there are gaps that I need to go fill in. So maybe that's something I really need to focus on. And I think that's sort of, I guess, the one, like, sort of way creating has, like, changed and shaped my life. It's like not one way, it's just a constant way of how I live.
That's great. So if you had advice for some young women coming up in your respective fields, like, 1 or 2 things you could tell them that they absolutely must always do in order to be a successful human being, what would that be?
So much pressure.
Oh, it's like all things, not just a human being.
Hey, girl. My advice for you would be to really, I think one thing that was really, I think, important for me was to always be learning and taking things in, and to never be so set in your ways and your style that you're not willing to learn something new. I think that as a creative person, it's so important to have your own voice and your own something that sets you apart. But I think it's also super important to always evolve, constantly be evolving, constantly be learning, constantly be adding new things. And that's not to say that you can't still, have that thing that makes you you. But I think when we stop learning and we stop changing and we stop evolving, like, that's when we die as artists, as creatives. And I think that that's something where I died a little bit. I died a few times, and I've revived. I've come back. But I think that that there are definitely it's so important to always be learning and stretching yourself.
Yeah, I think on that same sort of strand as you talked about, like, this whole always learning and moment where you kind of die a little bit. Like, I think for me, for what I would say is don't be afraid that you're never going to lose that thing that you love because you tried it. Like, just, it's almost one of them. I'm not going to say just do it because that's just lame. But you just, if you love something and it's really what you want, just take the time and go after it. Don't settle. Like, never settle. Just never. Just say that it may hurt a lot more and it's going to be a lot scarier than doing that thing that you're like, oh, well, I'm kind of good at this. I do like it. But if it's that thing you love, always pursue that. Pursue that first and foremost, and I think everything else in it will work out right.
Jim Carrey had a really good quote for this that I thought was very inspirational.
Okay.
He said something about basically like you could fail at anything, and people are miserable every day doing things that they hate. And it's like you might as well try that thing that you love, and you know, even if it's not doesn't come out exactly as how you thought it would, even if it, you know, it's so much better like if you're gonna fail at anything, fail at the thing that you love. Like people are failing every day
at things they only kind of mediocre like,
absolutely hate or mediocre like. But I mean, sometimes things they absolutely hate. So it's like, man, give it a shot.
Yeah.
Do you give your gift room to change? You know, like for me personally, like, you know, like over time, music, the meaning and the importance of music in my life has changed based on my life experiences, you know, like being divorced or, you know, like I've been through a lot of shit, and like it just, now it's music where it was my God. Now it isn't, because I have a different perspective on life. Have you noticed that has happened for you also?
I would completely agree with that. Just given my current circumstances, it takes a lot to admit that the thing that you loved and put so highly as your God and almost could be viewed differently. It could hold a different place, a different space, a different form than what you first imagined. And it is important to allow that space, because I think right now I am allowing the space for myself to imagine my life differently, but also I think imagine my life bigger than what it could be. And I think without that, it's like Daisy said, you're not imagining yourself that space to be bigger and different and change in a different form, you're going to stop growing. And then what else do you have left? You're not creating anymore at that point. So, yeah, I just think that is very, very important to allow yourself that space to change. I've been struggling a lot with that in the last year, about being like, maybe I just need to make a different choice. I don't have to do this in this way that was put before me. And maybe me being a pastry chef was just the beginning of something. Yeah. It's not always just this like, there's no end.
Right.
So.
I would say the same as that. I always kind of was like, when I was growing up, I was like, man, you know, I for a while I was like, oh, I'm going to be a famous artist, and I'm going to be like Picasso and blah, 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 blah. And for me, it's become definitely more, I'm very selective on the projects that I take on. And if there's something that I don't want to do, I don't do it. And for a while I was like, you know, I have to do everything that comes across, you know, to me. And my mom, you know, was always like, you gotta, you know, if you want to make money, you gotta do commissions, you gotta do that, and you gotta do this and that. And she was very encouraging, but it was like, really like, you know, hey, like, this is something that you gotta do. If you want to be an artist, you gotta do this, you gotta do that. And I realized like, that's not the kind of artist that I want to be. I want to make things that I like, and I don't want to make things that I don't like. And if I get paid for it, great. And there are a lot of things that I do get paid to do. And if I don't get paid for it, and it's something that I still like, and it's something that I feel good about, and it's something that I feel like, you know, builds my community, then I'm going to do it. And I think a lot of the work that I make that I like the best is like for me. Like a lot of the work that I make, there's very little work that I have made for somebody else that's been something that I've been like, I love this. So now even when I do commissions, I always make sure that I can maintain that control, and I never do anything just for the money anymore. And if I don't make another dime off my art ever again, like I would be okay with that if I could just do it for myself. Wow. You know, and I think that's really important as a creative person, is to not get too caught up in like, you know, what you think that you have to do to be accepted by other people. Definitely still challenge yourself, still grow. You can still be a creative person and make money. I think we're both, you know, testaments to that we have been able to
survive
professionally, you know, do these things that we love to do. But I think when you get too caught up in that, I know for me that was definitely a changing point when I realized like, oh, like I'm not going to be selling paintings for thousands of dollars, because I'll be, at least not right now, I'll be miserable because I'll be making stuff that I don't like. People wanted to pay me to do things, and I was like, oh, like freaking
no. It's like the choice for me right now to go and work at, I could go work at a place and, you know, a bigger, probably more, a really established like restaurant or a restaurant group. Those places, I think as a chef, that's like the hard decision you're looking at, is that if maybe I really want to focus and try it and do like something completely on the outside, like there are so many small restaurants, but there's, how do I like pay my bills? Like, how do I get health insurance? All these other things that you're like looking at these big groups, and you can go in there. I could be a pastry chef, make $60,000, $75,000. Like, yeah, great. I only have this like easy work week and this stuff, but am I truly going to be happy doing that? Exactly. It's this constant thing of like right now I'm like looking at jobs and what do I really want out of a place? What do I value now?
Yeah. Prioritizing, basically.
Prioritizing. And it's like, you know, I've like learned I can live on a little less, but I can't live without like loving what I'm doing in the day. Like I can't do that.
Yeah. So that kind of leads me to my next question. What are you most thankful for?
I would definitely say I'm most thankful for the people in my life that I think support like me and what I do, and like the people that like buy work from me that are like diehard fans. My family, both my, you know, biological, you know, family that raised me, and then my in-laws, and then my friends that are my family, like, dude, like freaking go hard for me. My friends will like, you know, help me at my pop-up shops, and my husband was like talking, he's like, yeah, you know, like this piece was inspired by da 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 da, like it's limited edition, and like that, you know, hustling for me, and you know, sharing my stuff, and fam out all over that are you know, reposting and like, you know, sharing my work, and like and I think that for me is really what motivates me, is like when I know that like I have people that are like going hard for me. I'm like, how can I not go hard for myself? How can I not, you know, go hard for them and support them, and not only what they do, but also like to continue to pursue this when I know that this is something that like they support me on. So I'd say I'm just grateful for that.
That's beautiful.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I also like, obviously it's just like, well, my friends, my family, but I think part of a lot of what I see is just like the inspiration that comes from my friends and family, which like it keeps me in awe, I think, like constantly. Like I'm in awe of Daisy. I'm in awe of like Darian, and like all of like these people who I think maybe it's like just happens that I've managed to come into my life and just be like just this form of inspiration of watching people who are down about achieving their dreams and going after what they want. I'm in awe of my parents, my dad, who's like about almost 60 and is like, well, I just like love my job because I'm going to go pursue like opening like a grocery store chain that's about addressing like food deserts, because here I've never ran a grocery store, but I believe in this thing, and just being in like awe, like that awe, and having that in my life, that inspiration. I think that's something that I'm constantly every day. I think I like look around at things and people, and that's just a general feeling of thankfulness for me.
True. When you see somebody else like sacrifice and like go, it like is so inspiring,
and it's like it's just amazing. And then like when you see your friends like in their element, and I'm like, it's
doing that thing.
Yeah, I don't know. I got to a friend's like art show the other week, and I was just like, I'm like, so this is what it's like in your life. Look at you, like you're like this form of like magic, and like having that like sense of magic and wonder in my life is something I'm very thankful for.
Wow. I want to. There you go. Give us some love for you guys who can't see it. They're hugging. It's real nice.
My friends who are my family.
I gave Alycia her first set of dinnerware when we were in high school.
Yeah, my 16th birthday, because I needed like, some bowls and fancy chopsticks and placemats.
I like to think I started it all, but I didn't.
Listen, I want to thank you guys for coming over today. This is the Working Artist Project, and yeah, thank you.
Thanks for having us.
It was the bomb.
It's fun.
Later.